We are on. So I guess we got to kind of talk a little bit louder, maybe than we would normally talk.
Okay. We can make that work.
How do you say your last name, man?
Koeppen. The O is actually silent.
Really?
Yeah, I would never.
would never figured out how to say your name.
Yeah, it's the American bastardization.
Right.
The German name.
So I will tell everybody, I guess, that this is Ben. How'd you say it again? Koeppen?
Koeppen.
Koeppen. Fuck, I've already fucked it up already.
I get Koeppen all the time.
Yeah. So Ben is another source to sea paddler. He went down the Mississippi River. Started off behind us, right? The 22nd of July, you said?
Yep.
Yeah, so we started the 14th of July. And man, you just wiped the floor with us, really.
I don't know about that. I was chasing you guys for about 3 weeks, man.
I know. I
trying to get you.
I kept saying, man, Ben's going to catch us for sure. And
oh, man, that's fun.
you ended up doing what, 64 days?
64 days, yep.
And that includes some time off the river as well?
Yep, 3 0 days and one the first day, 2 miles.
Right.
Not a whole lot, but.
So actually 61 days on the river then? Or?
Yeah, 61 days on the river.
Yeah. And that's what I did 87 days. I think Eric and Harry did 89 days because I stayed 2 extra days off the river than they did. So, and then Willie, I'm not sure. He finished up the Sunday before we finished on that Friday. So I'm not sure exactly how many 0 days he had and what have you. I haven't talked to him and figured all his timeline out. But so he was probably on there, I don't know, 84 days maybe or something like that. But with his timeline, he had to get back and do some stuff. So of course split up from us. But so tell me again how you got hooked up with the Mississippi River.
So I'd been doing some kayaking when I was younger. Had a family cabin up in northern Wisconsin where I grew up.
Cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
So Wisconsin. So where you're at in Wisconsin? I know you said that.
Grew up
Is it close to the river?
No. I actually grew up suburb of Milwaukee, kind of half an hour west of, actually probably about 20 minutes west of downtown. But like most people, most families in Wisconsin, there's some family member that has a cabin up north. And so every summer we'd spend a week up there. And probably when I was in high school, it was my aunt that owned the cabin. She bought a couple kayaks, and I'd spend a lot of my time out on the lake, paddling around. And when I got into college, I bought myself a kayak, tried to take it out, but wasn't able to use it as much as I'd like to. And then I moved down to Florida, and again, I was just working so much down there that I wasn't able to use it as much as I would like to. But when quarantine happened, I started working from home. And at that point in time, I was living in an apartment about 30 feet from the lake that I was living on.
Right.
And so I would cut out of work 5:30, 6 o'clock. And I'd spend 2 hours every night on the water. And yeah, that April, I just kind of fell in love with being on the water again. And I had always kind of had this mentality of like, I want to go do some kind of long trip, whether it's the Appalachian Trail or whatever it is. But as I was out there paddling one day, I was like, is there some kind of equivalent for kayaking? Yeah. And I was like, biggest body of water that I could think of that's like, straight line is Mississippi River. Obviously not a straight line, not a lot of curves, but so I looked it up, and there's actually a bunch of people that have done it. And there's a whole Facebook page and everything. I actually came across this one blog that this older couple had done, where they talked about their trip. They had done a bunch of other hikes and stuff in the United States, in Europe, things like that.
Right.
And so they had this really detailed page about kind of how the river went for them. And the idea kind of took hold. Over the next 12 months, I started packing together some materials and gathering some gear. And when the stars aligned and I decided to leave my job, the river was like the next thing on my mind. Yeah. I was so ready to go.
Right on. So hold on for a second, man. I'm going to grab one thing. I think will make this the audio better.
All right.
Damn heater's on in there. That's probably not good. Wasting gas. I didn't realize I had it set to come on. But I think if I put this up on this table, it'll catch the audio better.
Okay.
Anyway, it's like right there at our mouth level. And I forgot, or before I forget, you're supposed to actually put this in your vehicle.
Okay.
So later on tonight, I guess, put it on your rearview mirror.
Will do. Appreciate it.
So yeah, so you decided to do the Mississippi River. I know we've talked a little bit about it. So your dad was kind of your support crew going down.
Yep.
One thing we haven't talked about yet, and we can talk about your dad, going down the river with you and how that experience was, and if that was a bonding or if it made your relationship worse maybe. But what kind of gear did you go down with? So you had 2 different kayaks,
yep.
And then what other stuff did you have going down with you?
So I actually kind of had 3 different kind of setups. It was broken up really by Minneapolis and St. Louis.
Right.
North of Minneapolis, I had the 10-foot kayak. Traveled around with just like a backpack, full of whatever I needed for that day. So, a little bit of food, some water. Didn't have any of my camping gear.
How much did you try and keep in the bank? We tried to do like 5 to 7 days worth of food at a time. Is that about what you kept on board? Or
no, in the backpack I'd keep whatever the day was, because I knew each night I was going to get pulled out. My dad was going to grab me, and we were going to stay somewhere else. So I was really just floating down the river with whatever I needed for the day.
Okay.
And then from Minneapolis down to St. Louis, was in the 14-foot kayak. Bigger water, bigger boat, just felt safer. I also had a smaller hole, so if there was waves or anything, it wasn't going to take too much water.
And you had a skirt on both of these, or?
I had a skirt for the 14-foot. I didn't have a skirt for the 10-foot. Okay. But the water was so low up to Minneapolis that I wasn't really worried about any of that.
Yeah.
But then from Minneapolis to St. Louis, again, I pretty much
besides the lakes. The lakes.
That's true. I lucked out on Winnie, though. Man, it was dead calm when I got out to the center of Winnie.
It's kind of same, yeah. We lucked out on all the lakes. Every single one of them was like glass.
Yeah. Cass, to me, oh, man. I had, when I was crossing Lake Cass, this wind coming from right to left, and it was fighting me the whole way.
Yeah.
That was, I think, like my first big day. I went from Bemidji all the way across Cass, and I was beat by the time I got to the other shore.
Yeah. I kind of broke into your story with all that. But
no, it's all good.
Yeah, Lake Winnie, I guess, was, once we went around the, I don't know what fucking side it is, south side, east side, west side, north side, I don't know. But
south.
We skirted the banks, and we probably could have shot right across. I mean, that day was very calm for us. Looking back on it, I wish we would have gone across, but we were so new to this thing, so early into it, we were all scared to death
right.
of any water, much less going across the middle of this giant lake that everybody's warned you about, before you got there. But anyway, we circumvented it, and we got all the way around the side, and then the very last little stretch that we did, we had some killer headwinds that we really had to fight before we came out into this little cove, and it kind of ended up going into this place called Tamarack Lodge or something where we stayed. So
nice.
Yeah, that was the only headwind we had really on any of the lakes. Was the last part of Lake Winnie. Okay. Yeah. But that's that's way different than us, because we had to carry 5 to 7 days worth of water and food
at all times. Yeah.
All this extra weight at all times. So you had to have somebody there every night to kind of resupply you and have food ready for you.
Yeah, I didn't have to carry
every bit of weight. Man, I
didn't have to pack my tent and none of that stuff.
Yeah.
Really, I had like maybe 3 liters of water on me at any given time.
Right.
So I didn't have to pack too much of that. I was floating pretty light all the way up to St. Louis, and then St. Louis I packed everything in the boat, everything that I would need, and that was it's probably like the sketchiest part of my trip, was going through Port of St. Louis with the heaviest boat that I had been into that point. I was riding a lot lower, probably a couple inches lower than I was used to riding at that point.
And plus, you don't have the hull and stuff to load stuff in, right? So you got to strap it like to the top of the kayak.
Actually, I had the front. So the front is where I put a couple gallons of water. I travel with 4 gallons of water on me. I put 2 up front. I put my clothes and just some of like the entertainment stuff. I never really broke into it, but I had like books. I had some puzzles, a journal if I wanted to. I never really busted open that bag at all, but
Right.
that was up front. And then in the back compartment, I had the other 2 gallons of water. I had my tent, my sleeping pad, and what else did I have back there? My backpack that had all the food in it.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, I put, I think the only thing I had left was my little camping stool. So I traveled pretty light. I didn't have too much sitting on the outside of the kayak.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was that first day and going through Port of St. Louis, it was narrower than probably should have been. I mean, the waves were just bouncing around. I don't know what it was like when you were in there, but I was there on a Monday morning.
Well, yeah, like I said, we portaged around pretty much
all of St.
Louis, so we didn't get to go through any of that stuff because we'd heard your stories. I think you had told Willie or you told somebody that it was pretty narrow going through there.
I was like, dude, that's
we just skipped it all together. So fuck it.
Yeah,
I mean that wasn't the plan, but once we got there and the supporter that we had there in St. Louis just said, "Hey, we can take you all the way around all this stuff," and we're like, "Yes, that sounds great."
Yeah, dude, that was, like I said, I had never felt as small in the river as I did in Port of St. Louis.
Wow.
It was all the things that were like where the boats dock and where they're coming up to the grain mills and everything. Everything just felt so big, and I was so tiny.
Yeah.
And I was riding low. These waves were huge. I was like, dude, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this.
Right.
So I just paddled as hard as I could, just like get me out of the Port of St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big change to go, add 4 feet to your boat and add all that weight, and then it's a different vessel just to begin with, so it's going to maneuver differently. And
I think one of the things, too, is kind of lower Mississippi in general, once you hit Missouri River and it stopped being controlled by the locks and dams, it felt different. Like the river, I don't know, kind of felt like it had a mind of its own.
Right.
It moved the boat different. It wasn't like calm water that was restricted by whatever lock was in front of you. It was flowing to the ocean.
Yeah.
And just paddling there and trying to figure out, all right, now it's pushing me this way, now it's pushing me this way, and trying to just roll with those punches as the river sent them. And
that's exactly what you got to do, right? I mean, you literally go with the flow.
Yep.
I mean, you've got to go. It's amazing when you go down this river how much control we've tried to do on this river. From the riprap to the lock and dams to the regular dams to the wing dams. We've just tried so much to control this river, and it can't be controlled.
Yeah, it's going to do it once.
It's going to do it once.
That's why I don't know how many times you were out there and you saw the Coast Guard with their barges out there, and they had the construction equipment like repairing the riprap or placing new stone along the bank.
Oh yeah,
they're fighting a losing battle,
mm-hmm.
but they're doing it just to try to control this thing, and it's it's wild, man.
Yeah, and I think I had that same problem when I first started out. I tried to control it a little bit as well.
Yeah,
and literally about a third of the way down, I just finally decided, go with the flow. I mean, that should be the word of every single day when you're going down that river. It's just don't try and fight it. Just go with with what the river is giving you that day, whether it be the wind, the current, the mist, the fog, the boat traffic.
I think that's one of the things that I picked up early on the trip that kind of really stuck with me. Because I don't know, up to that point in life, like I love to plan things out. I love to have a plan on what's going on, and I don't know, like just knowing that the wind could fuck you up, it could kind of ruin how it's going. There was one day in northern Minnesota where I kept on, it was one of the windier parts of the river. I felt like every turn that I made, the wind was always coming straight at my face.
Yeah.
Like I would head south, I'd do a 180-degree turn, I'd head north, and it was still in my face. And I was like, what is happening?
I know.
And then I just stopped in the river one time, and I was just like, dude, why am I getting upset about this? Just, I don't need to be. It is what's going to be. I'm going to be out here paddling regardless of whatever's happening to me. I'm just going to go out here and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And after that, it was easier.
Yeah, I had to tell myself that same thing a few times to just relax. Don't think about it. Don't think about what's 20 miles down the river. Just think about what you're doing right now. And that's really all you can do. And that's really all you can do in life, really, is live for today. And you can't control the future. You can't control what happened behind you. You just got to keep moving on in the current moment. And I found myself doing that sometimes early on. I was thinking too far ahead, or I was thinking about something that I should have been thinking about. I should have been thinking about this damn river, and there was a bunch of times where you kind of get in some trouble because you're not paying attention because your mind is elsewhere instead of being in the moment. And really a dangerous thing to do out there on the river, especially once, like you said, you got down past St. Louis and you started having all this traffic, major traffic. You really have to focus on what you're doing at the moment.
Did you ever come across any whirlpools?
Oh, the whirlpools are my worst part of the whole river. I hated the whirlpools. They scared the living crap out of me. And early on, they didn't really bother me too much. But Willie had a big phobia of the whirlpools. And
when I talked to him, he was.
He watched way too many YouTube videos and these boats getting taken underwater, in these whirlpools and stuff. And we were like, man, just don't look at them. If you don't look at them. Because it seems like when you look at something, Eric had this philosophy on the rivers: don't look at the rock, because when you're steering and focusing on something, you're going to ride right into it.
Yep, absolutely.
So focus on where you want to go and not what you don't want to go into. So we told Willie, just don't look at the world. Pop up too. Sometimes they weren't just there. I mean, you're going. You think you're going on the right path that you need to go on. All of a sudden, this big whirlpool just opens up, and there's a little hole, and an eye in the middle of it, like a hurricane type thing. And you would get into it, and it would immediately just throw you to the right or throw you to the left, or sometimes spin you in a full circle. Sometimes you couldn't paddle out of it. I mean, it took you 50 strokes just to get out of the vortex, of the whirlpool. And then a couple times, it would actually suck, one side of my boat down into the water, and I took water on over the top of the canoe a couple times, and I would have to actually push my hand on the other side of the canoe to kind of correct myself and get back out of the suck, and then bail some water out of the boat or pull over to the side sometimes. But I had one particular time. We had just passed. Where is Helena? Is that
Arkansas? Yep.
We had just passed come through Helena. We'd just gone underneath the bridge. Eric and I were together.
Okay.
Harry was way up. Willie was already gone. We had just gone underneath the bridge, and when we go underneath the bridge, there was a whole bunch of traffic going on the right-hand side. There was barges lined up all the way down the shoreline. There was a bunch of boats coming back and forth across the river, tugboats.
Yep.
We decided to cross the river at that point. We were on the right. We decided to go over to the left, to the red side. There was a bunch of little wing dam sections over there, a bunch of coves that you could dive into. So we decided to go across, and the very first thing was we didn't realize there was a barge, coming upriver, pretty far out ahead of us until we got about halfway across the river, and we're like, holy fuck, that barge is coming this direction.
We gotta go.
So we had to kind of cut, a direct line to the left side instead of cutting the diagonal like we were doing initially, and we started paddling really hard to get out of the way of this barge. So that barge goes by, causes some pretty good turbulence going on.
Chop, yep.
It got really, really choppy. It got really nerve-wracking, and I mean, my whole body was just shaking. My nerves were going. For some reason, that particular barge had just kicked up a whole bunch of churn.
Yep.
And it was not fun, and the waves were coming every which way.
It was on a curve too, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
That's the worst situation.
Yeah, so we go over, and I had to pull out. I told Eric, I said, I got to pull out, man. I got to recompose myself. I got to take a break. I'm shaking like crazy because it was just kind of a sketchy situation that we're in. So we pull off into this wing dam area, a little
slice
dam on each side. I said, okay, I'm good to go. We had a little snack or whatever, used the bathroom. We get back in the boats, and I said, okay, I'm ready to go. So we start pulling out around this wing dam to come back out into the right outside the channel, which we thought was right outside the channel, but actually the shoreline had become the red side. There was no cones anymore. There was just shoreline was red. So we didn't realize we were actually in the red zone, inside the channel, I guess. So we come out of this wing dam, and you go wide at that wing dam, so you miss all those big whirlpools. So I went wide, come around the corner. We're coming up on a corner, and there's a huge barge coming around the other side. It was probably 4x5, maybe, I guess.
Okay.
And it was one of those real high barges, like it wasn't loaded down real heavy. It was, tall.
Yep.
So we come around. I'm in the canoe here. The barge is coming this direction. All these little wing dam whirlpools are going on right here. Plus, there's some riprap. There's some rock over here. So I'm coming around. I'm worried about these whirlpools, flipping me one direction or the other. I swear the barge, Eric says it wasn't that close. I keep telling people it was about 12 feet away from us. He says, no, it wasn't that close to us. I said, man, I'm pretty sure where that electrical box is over there, that's about how close the barge was going
25, 30 yards
around us, yeah. So I'm coming this way. There's rocks on this side. That barge is on this side. So I'm literally between a rock and a hard place type thing. Plus, I got these whirlpools going on. So I come down this thing. I somehow angled my canoe sideways. I'm kind of riding adrift sideways, had my bow pointed away from this barge.
Yep.
Because I didn't want one of those whirlpools to all of a sudden just whip me this way and shoot me into the barge. I swear I was super close to this fucking thing. Scariest part of the entire trip was being in between those rocks and that barge. I couldn't go to the left because I would go into the rocks. I couldn't go to the right.
Hit the barge.
I'm hitting the barge. I had to keep this nice straight line.
Yeah.
Eric's behind me. White knuckling it. My teeth are grinding. I'm fucking nervous as hell. My whole body's shaking. My legs are shaking. And then after the barge passes, now we're on this turn. Super turbulence and chop for the next 30 minutes after that. So scariest part of my entire trip, right after Helena, Arkansas, I guess it was. Arkansas.
Yeah, man.
So that one, and there was another one, and I'll talk about the other one maybe later on, but there was another incident where it was a pretty close call. I thought I was going to get sucked into the back of a push boat, into the engine or whatever, but
Dang.
What was your scariest movement out there, if you had one?
It might have been Port of St. Louis. It was some of the choppiest water I had. It was where I felt like the least comfortable.
Right. The new boat, the weight,
the narrow,
increased flow, traffic,
all that stuff. But there was a couple times coming around some of those corners where when you would get a headwind and then a big boat that's pushing 4x5, 5x5, something like that, coming in the other direction. So he's kicking up a bunch of waves. The wind's kicking up waves, and then you're following around these wing dams.
Yeah.
There was one time, I don't remember where I was. It must have been Mississippi, Tennessee South, somewhere there. I turned a corner, and it was kind of a straightaway. There was a big bridge across there. That's about all I remember. But as I turned this corner, it was the barge, it was the wind, it was the wing dams. All of it just created this huge chop that just started sending. I had the video of it. Just started sending waves into my boat, and it just started taking them. And I ended up setting my phone down. I thought I had paused the recording, but I ended up recording for like 9 minutes as I paddled my way to like the nearest sandbar. And I'm just cursing, just yelling at the waves. And I finally get out there. Or get to the sandbar. I bilge out my kayak. I get my spray skirt on and everything, and I head back out to the river. And it's still kind of choppy. It's got the headwind and the residuals from the barge that was heading up river. But just something about having the spray skirt on just made me feel a little bit more connected to the boat, and made me feel like, I think that day I posted on Facebook, like, just the comfort in knowing that once I have that spray skirt on, everything outside the boat is just external, and it just washes over me. And that was one of like the big moments for me on the lower part of the river. It was just kind of that realization that there's a lot of external shit going on, and sometimes you just got to let it like roll off you.
Yeah.
And that's something that with my job that I had left, I struggle with that. I took a lot, not necessarily personally, but I carried a lot of that. And so kind of knowing to just let some of it roll off was definitely helpful. So again, I just that's part of the river that I loved, that you don't always hear about, but it's the lessons that the river teaches you.
Yeah.
That you can take to the rest of life.
Right. Absolutely. So this was the biggest adventure you've done so far in your life? I mean, you're what, 29, right?
Yeah, 29. Yeah, probably that's the longest. Definitely the most dedication had to go to it. I've taken a couple, road trips before in the past. In college, freshman year. After freshman year, I did a 17-day road trip, and then after senior year, I did a 20-day road trip or something. So I'd gone out on my own and done some stuff. I had also done between sophomore and junior year semester abroad with some other kids that were at my university, and I did a week by myself I went to China, so I did 6 days in Beijing and then 4 days in Hiroshima. Nice. By myself. So I learned a lot there too, and yeah, I've done quite a few travels, but this was probably my biggest trip, biggest endeavor, biggest dedication to something. Right.
So what's on the agenda now? I know right now you're traveling around.
Yep.
In your truck. You sleep in your truck.
Yep. Last 2 months been living in the truck.
Yeah.
Started in Arizona, went up, went down, went over, coming back down again. I'm hoping.
And it's mainly hiking, right? That you've been doing.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of hiking. That's kind of my main mode.
Right. You told me earlier you haven't gotten the water until yesterday, right?
Yep. Yeah. Actually, this morning was the first time I got back in the water since the river. Again, just feeling like a fool for the first 5 minutes, not knowing how to paddle.
Yeah.
But after that, just got in the groove and had a great time. But yeah, hiking is mostly what I've been doing lately. Definitely a big transition from using only your arms and not really your legs to using mostly your legs and not your arms. But yeah, I've been doing that for the last couple months. Hit up a bunch of national parks. I've been going around trying to do state high points as well. I've gotten, I think, 21 to this point.
What are you saying now?
State high points. So it's the highest elevation.
Okay.
In any state, and so yeah, I've gotten about 21. Working on it. So I don't know. It takes you to some more remote locations and states and places that you necessarily wouldn't have gone if you're just taking a road trip through someplace. So
yeah,
it's fun to do that. But yeah, living in the truck. Been at it for about 2 months since I left the river.
So what's the highest elevation so far that you've been to?
It might be Mount Humphrey in Arizona. I think it's 12,633.
That's the one up close to Flagstaff, right?
Flagstaff, yeah. So yeah, I tried doing Mount Bora up in Idaho. It's a 4-mile hike to the peak, 5,300 feet of elevation gain over 4 miles. So it was incredibly steep. Missed it by about a week. There was a snowstorm that came through about a week before I got there, and the last 3/4 of a mile was just covered in snow, and I had to turn back. So,
So do you like hiking more or kayak?
I would say hiking more. I don't know. I got a thing with water. One of my biggest fears is open water.
Oh, me too. Trust me. Yeah.
I don't know about that, but I loved doing the Mississippi River. I would totally do it again. I just think there's more opportunities out there to go hiking. Feels like it's more set up. I don't know, but then again, I haven't necessarily looked as much into paddle trips. I didn't know about the Yukon trip. Again, there's rivers everywhere, so
yeah. I mean, I guess a lot of people do the Missouri. I guess is the other one, but
MO 340.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I want to do a long expedition like that again. I mean, we said numerous times on the river, at least Eric and I did, that 1,000 miles would have been enough. Yeah. Once we hit that 1,000-mile point, we're like, this is probably good enough.
Now it's just repetitive.
Yeah. Right. That was enough to give you a challenge and to say you've done something epic, but after that, it's just more river, Yep. But I say that, I mean, really, every damn day on that river, man, was something new. It was something different. You thought it was just going to be wet and water and it was going to all look the same, but every damn day you had a different scenery, whether it be wildlife, whether it be a town, whether it be a cool looking bridge, the shoreline change, the bluffs of Iowa, every damn day. And, of course, going from this wide to a couple miles wide, but every day had a new adventure for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the things I loved about the river is how much its character changed from headwaters all the way down.
Yeah.
And it was always changing.
Yeah. But what's really cool about it, you know, is you start up there, you know, where it's 20 inches across or whatever. So you have, I mean, really, you have the entire freaking state of Minnesota to acclimate to this river and and learn how to navigate the river. And the river teaches you on the way down, you know.
Yep.
So you start as a novice up there at the top. And by the time you're through Minnesota, I think you're pretty much,
You're ready.
not an expert, but you're pretty expert in navigating your vessel. But then you run into that new problem, you know, from Minnesota down, where you got the locks and you got more traffic, and
You're always learning.
yeah, so you're always learning, man. It's the river teaches you all the way down, but you need those real small areas up top to kind of wet your whistle and get your bearings about you, and
This is how we're going to operate in the
get your
community.
muscles ready to paddle down the river, you know.
Yep, for sure.
So I'm glad it was so kind of feeble up top, because if it would have started off as big as it is, you know, St. Louis. I mean, I almost quit the river about 30 times, if I'm being honest.
Really?
I mean, it was a lot of days I was like, especially when my hands started really bothering me. You know, I don't remember where I was when this hand started bothering me. It went numb, like completely numb. Like all three of these fingers were numb all the time. The hand was numb, and I knew it was a carpal tunnel problem. You know, and there was a time there where I thought I was going to have to get off the river. I just don't think I can do it.
Damn.
And I just acclimated to it and pushed through it and told my mind to forget about it, I guess. But yeah, it was pretty much numb like half of the second half of the trip. This hand was completely numb. And the fingers, you know, we've discussed it earlier today, that couldn't close my fingers around a paddle for about the first hour of the day.
Yeah. Trigger finger,
yeah. I would just roll over in my tent at night. You know, you kind of push off the floor or whatever to kind of roll yourself over, and it would kill. I mean, my hands would just be on fire. Just if I moved them the wrong way, or if I woke up in the middle of the night, even to scratch my head, you know, my fingers hurt like crazy. I mean, it stung. It was almost like I had stress fractures in my fingers.
Dang.
Is what it felt like.
I gotta pee. Can I go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry about that.
All right. Well, that's a first, I guess. We've done the entire 32 minutes looking at the fucking ground. Isn't that great? That's what happens when you set up a podcast real quickly. But Ben had to go pee, by the way, so he's in the bathroom. So yeah, this is the setup that we were supposed to be looking at for the last 20-something minutes. But what can you do, you know? Enjoy the audio. You don't always have to watch, and a lot of people don't even watch to begin with. Right, Leia? Leia's been out here the whole time with us. You've missed Leia. But we're out here at Palmetto Shores RV Resort up in Summerlin. I think it's, where the hell are we? Summerlin? It's a little south of Florence, east of Sumter, north of Santee. I'll give you all the directions you want. Yeah, I've already fucked this whole podcast up. I mean, I didn't even realize it, but I set the camera up, and you know, I've got my little switcher thing here that does all the stuff. So I had it sitting on this thing the whole time, kind of just looking at the ground or whatever. I forgot to switch it to this camera showing us. So the whole fucking 30 minutes worth is
looking at the ground.
So he'll hear us, but you won't see us. Yeah.
Oh, man, that's all right.
What can you do?
But yeah, my hands. Yeah, it was the middle two fingers on my right hand. They went first, and then it was pretty much every finger on my left hand.
Yeah.
Kind of came for the last couple weeks. And that faded first, and took the middle finger on the right hand. About a month and a half to get back to normal. That was rough.
Yeah, like I said, we ended on October 15th, so I don't know what that is now. It's
a month and a half
or so, yeah. So same thing. Mine are about 90% better. Took me forever. Like we were discussing earlier, I couldn't even open, a pill bottle. I couldn't open a jar. Hell, I put some lotion on my hands one day, and I tried to get out of the bathroom, and I couldn't even open the bathroom door because my hands were a little greasy from the oil. But then I couldn't grip the doorknob either. Just stupid shit, man.
Yeah,
it was horrible.
And one of the things I noticed is just having the two different kayaks. The blue one has a bigger hole, and the orange one a little bit smaller, tighter, not as
so
wide of a boat.
Orange was more like a sea kayak type style or whatever.
Yeah. Not quite seaworthy, but narrower, tighter. It hugged me a lot more. But also
was the other one the 10-footer? Was it more stable? Did you feel more stable?
A lot more stable. Yeah. But my stroke needed to be different for each boat, and
so you had the same paddle for each boat.
I had the same paddle.
Yeah.
So it took me probably it was 19 days to get through Minneapolis for me. Probably about day 13, I had figured out like a good stroke where I wasn't, constantly thinking about, all right, are my hands in the right spot? Am I reaching enough? Am I turning more? To figure out how to paddle correctly, so that I'm, not ending up with like a muscle that's dead at the end of the day.
Right.
It took me a while to get that done, and then Minneapolis South. It was another 3 days before I figured out how to paddle with the different boat, because I'm sitting at a different angle. I have more space next to me. I don't have to go as high. It was kind of weird, just like trying to figure out a new stroke with a different boat.
I bet. I'm sure. Yeah, we went through three different paddles, so we had to learn how to paddle with a new paddle every goddamn time. So,
oh man.
The Willie broke his paddle first, and then Eric broke his paddle, and then I broke my paddle eventually. Harry never broke his. He ended up losing it, but he didn't break it. But
so none of the four you ended up with that paddle that you started with?
What's that now?
None of the four you ended up with the paddle that you started with?
No.
Oh man.
No. So, three of us broke our paddle. So Willie broke his first.
Yep.
We were
Iowa somewhere.
We were still right outside Minneapolis because he ended up getting a new paddle from the Mall of America, actually.
Gotcha.
At Eddie Bauer there. So
Eagle Museum in that town.
Excuse me?
You guys waited at the Eagle Museum, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where that was, but
yeah. So we had a supporter. We had just left Minneapolis. We stayed the night there. We had another supporter there that we didn't use. So we left there. Willie broke his paddle. We ended up pulling off the river. He and I pulled off. Fuck, what town was it? Red Wing? Is that something?
Red Wing was up there.
Is that close to Minneapolis?
Hastings, Red Wing, Prescott.
Yes, I think we were close to Red Wing, somewhere around there. We hadn't hit Pepin yet.
Okay, yep.
And he ended up calling this guy, and the guy was like, yeah, well, I can be there in a few minutes. I can pick you up and take you somewhere to get a new paddle. So there wasn't a paddle shop there locally, I don't think. So they ended up going to the Mall of America.
Dang.
Had an Eddie Bauer there. So he ended up getting a Werner paddle from Eddie Bauer for, I don't know, $100-something bucks. Warrior Expeditions actually paid for it for him.
Okay.
So then he got that. So he started paddling on a new paddle. He was in love with it. We get through Pepin, and Eric broke his paddle at the end of Pepin.
Okay.
So we got all the way to the end. There was a little campsite at the end there.
Yep.
Sand, whatever.
Yeah.
I remember exactly where it was, but he broke his paddle right before he got there. So we ended up calling that same guy. Of course, we were further down the river at that point. That same guy, he said, I can't come get you, but my parents are close to that area, so I can send them to get you some new paddles, and they can bring them downriver to you and meet you at XYZ. Okay. I think there was, maybe it was Hastings. It's Hastings where they had the Eagle Museum Conservatory thing.
I'm not sure where
I can't keep all the names straight of these fucking towns. But.
Hastings was north, though. North of Pepin.
Okay. No, this was after Pepin. So he got with his parents. We got with Warrior Expedition and said, look, this is the second paddle we broke, and we all need a new paddle because all these paddles are going to break eventually. So
Yeah.
More Expeditions ended up calling Eddie Bauer and said, "Hey, what kind of paddles do you have? I'd like to buy some." And we actually got different sizes. Initially we all had the exact same paddle, the exact same size, and we're all way different heights and everything.
Yeah.
So they weren't very good paddles to begin with. They were like fishing paddles. They were $89 or something.
Yeah.
Cheap ass paddles. Not what you need to go down the river in. It's nice for a 1 hour fishing trip or something, but not to go 2,200 miles down the damn river. It's like wearing Skechers, on the Appalachian Trail
Right.
instead of a hiking shoe, So she ended up calling, gave him the credit card number, bought 3 new paddles. They picked them up for us, drove an hour and a half to meet us downriver and give us the new paddles. These new paddles they bought us were on the other side of the scale. The blades were too big. They were heavier. They weren't carbon fiber. So we had heavier paddles and a bigger blade, so there's more resistance, pulling through the water.
Yeah.
Especially going into headwinds and stuff.
Oh,
We all
man.
started having new problems. Our shoulders started hurting again. Everything was
It'll
all acting
manifest
up.
itself everywhere. Oh,
Yeah.
man. I
So
can't imagine trying to change paddles.
Yeah, so reacclimated to that. Willie was okay because he had the one that he bought,
Yeah.
which was a really good paddle. So eventually, I think we stopped at a Dick's one day. Harry got himself another new paddle. Even though he never broke the original one, he didn't like the second one they gave us.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted something lighter and better, so he got a third paddle. I didn't like the paddle. It was killing my shoulders, the new weight and the blade size and everything.
Yeah.
I ended up going to Amazon, buying me a new paddle, had it shipped
up.
downriver and picked it up. Eric had a paddle company that he deals with in the Outer Banks up here in North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
And they ended up sponsoring him and sent him a new paddle.
That's awesome.
So we all got new paddles, essentially. And
At some point, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'll show you the 2 examples here after we get done. You can see the difference in weight and everything.
Yeah.
And I ended up buying an angled paddle for my third paddle.
Okay.
And I loved it. I mean,
Yeah?
way better than all the straight paddles.
Hesitant on those. I just don't
Loved
like. I don't know.
Yeah.
I could see it working.
Yeah, it was way better. It was way better ergonomically. I mean, it kept your wrists in a better position. My hands felt better. The paddle was half the weight of the new paddle that they had bought us.
Yeah.
And made all the difference in the world. I mean,
That's one of the things.
I don't know if I would have made it down the river with that second paddle they gave us.
Yeah. One of the things with when I was paddling that I noticed, just the angle of my wrists as I was kind of going, like
Right.
my right wrist, I think from weeks 3 to 6, by like hour 6 of that day, anytime after hour 6, it would start clicking like every other stroke.
I had that same thing.
And it just hurt. Like I didn't have as much power in that stroke.
Right.
And I can see that if it was angled, it might do better.
Yeah, I had it at one point where it felt like my wrist on this side was actually like separating, like pulling, like my ligaments were just stretched out or something.
Yeah.
Damaged, and every time I would pull on this side, it felt like it was just almost like separating.
Yeah, it's a good thing you're not doing that thousands of times a day.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the angle paddle made a world of difference. So you can check it out here in a minute, and we'll see what you think. But it was also over $450 for this paddle as well. So it was
holy cow.
It was a big expense, but well worth it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
because I don't think
you're
I would
doing
have
it thousands of times a day for how many days?
Yeah. The paddle makes all the difference. And that's what we said from the get-go. When we started breaking these paddles, we're like, why would they give us these cheap-ass fucking paddles?
Yeah.
To go 20,
right up there with the boat. Like
miles.
That's the piece of gear that needs to be
the boat and the paddle
the best.
are the 2 most important things on the entire trip. You can skimp on whatever else you want, but come on, man, give us a good paddle.
Yeah.
And I actually threw that paddle away. The very last campsite we stayed at before we hit Burns Point, we stayed at a boat ramp. I can't remember what the name of the boat ramp was.
Verdonville? Is it north of that?
I have no idea, man. I got no clue.
That's fair.
But it was a boat ramp, and I threw the original paddle away at that boat ramp in the trash there. And I wish I would have kept it now that I look back on it, but just so I could have all 3 of the paddles.
Yeah.
Especially for the talk I did, the presentation. I showed him 2 of the paddles, but I wish I would have had the original one to,
original.
As show and tell.
Don't do this.
Yeah. And they all broke on the same side, too. The exact same paddle, exact same side. So there's like a design flaw or something in that paddle. Yeah.
Damn.
But yeah, it made a huge difference. I mean, that second paddle, the blade was so big, we hit some tailwinds, or not tailwinds, some headwinds. Where the heck were we? We were in a pretty big part of the river. It might have been a lake. It couldn't have been a lake because Pepin was the last one we did, so it wasn't a lake. I don't know, but anyway, I was trying to keep up with Willie with this new paddle because I'd broken my other one, and I couldn't keep up with him. I told him, I said, Willie, I'm going to have to stop. I'm going to have to pull over or something because I cannot pull. There was so much wind coming at us, so much headwind, and I had so much resistance on these huge blades on this Carlisle paddle that I could not. I couldn't do it. I mean,
couldn't make it to the ground.
I would try and pull, and I just had no strength to get through it. I was barely moving. I mean, I was moving. I don't even know if I was going forward, really, at that point. And we were trying to make it to this dam, this lock and dam, and eventually got to it. But that paddle was horrible. Absolutely stunk.
Damn.
So anyway, so you paddled where today?
Congaree National Park.
Congaree National Park.
Yeah, it's right in the middle, smack dab in the middle of South Carolina. Small little national park, but went to the visitor center right away. Normally I don't do this, but I asked the ranger, or I guess one of the volunteers that was there, I've got a few hours here, want to do a 2-hour hike, 2-hour paddle, and he brought me to the map and was like, do this one, and it was this guy that he's probably been going through this park for the last 20, 30 years. Absolutely loves it, knows it like the back of his hand. And it was great advice. I'd looked up a little bit online of maybe I'll go do this, maybe I'll go do that. Had an idea of what I wanted to do, but the way he explained it and the way he sold it to me was it was awesome. So I went and did that and had a great time. Hiked about 5 miles. Went through all kinds of old growth forests and stuff. Hiked along the river for a little bit. And then it was a beautiful hike. And then I went over and did the paddle. Got back in the water, did about 6 miles there, and yeah, it was just incredibly beautiful, the whole place.
Yeah.
And
so
a little hidden gem.
So you went to Arizona first, right?
Yep. So after the river is done,
so
2 quick days.
Tell me how you got all the way back over here to South Carolina.
It's been a trip. So left Arizona. I was up in Lake Havasu, where my parents live.
Oh yeah, I haven't been there yet, but it's on my list.
Yeah. Nice place. Big boat town, lots of speedboats that go out on the lake, and
there's some nice public land down there too. So like RVing, you can stay down there for free.
Yes, I've done
for
that before.
14 days down there. Yeah.
Yep, that's one of the things I love about west of the Mississippi. There's a lot of
free
spots
public
like
land.
that. So I actually did a lot of that with my truck. But I did Arizona to Flagstaff. Had a quick rain day in Flagstaff the second day I was there. The next day after that, I hiked Mount Humphreys. Went down, did North Rim, Grand Canyon.
Oh, nice.
And then I went up to Zion, Bryce, Capitol Reef, Canyonlands, Arches. Then went up from there to Chalice and the Sawtooths up in Idaho. Then went over to Montana, visited some buddies that were there for work. They had an airport conference there. And then I went down from Montana to Yellowstone, spent 3 days in the Tetons.
Man.
Did a bunch of hiking there. Then I went down through Colorado. Went to Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park. Did some hikes there. That was a lot of fun. Did 4 days in Colorado Springs. Thinking of moving there. So checked out some spots and enjoyed the town for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I flew back to Wisconsin real quick for a couple of days. My aunt had a funeral, so went and did that. Met up with some family. Then I flew back to Denver, spent some time with an old coworker there for 4 days. Drove up through South Dakota, went to a concert in Des Moines. Went camping for a weekend with a cousin up in Minnesota. Spent some time with my brother and his family up in northern Wisconsin. Middle of Wisconsin, Madison, went to a Badgers game with some coworkers from Florida.
Nice.
They flew up, showed them around town, had a good time there. Then I came across, did Indiana Dunes National Park on the banks of the Lake Michigan. And then I spent a weekend, 3 days or so, with an old college buddy and her brother in Kalamazoo. We did some drinking there, had some fun. And then went over to just outside Cleveland is Cuyahoga Valley National Park. So did some hiking there. Went down from Cuyahoga through Charleston into New River Gorge, which is the newest national park. I think it was this January it became a national park, number 63. Did some hikes there. Then met up with some family in DC area, did Thanksgiving, and now I'm coming back south.
Wow.
So, yeah, I've been quite a few places in the last couple months here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd seen that when you got off the river. I'm like, God damn, this guy doesn't stop, man. 'Cause I kept following you on Strava and saw all your hikes and all kind of stuff. And I'm like, damn, this guy just needs to take a break. But
yeah, I'll
I
eventually
guess
get
when
there.
you're 29, you don't take a break.
But yeah, I got next month coming up. Heading down to Orlando the next couple days. Going to stay with some friends there from work. Hang out. I'm hoping to do starting mid-December through just before Christmas. Like an 8-9 day trip into the Everglades. Paddling, it's about 120 miles. The loop down along the coast and then up through the Wilderness Waterway, something like that it's called.
Okay.
I applied for the permit. I'm still waiting to hear back from them on whether it's approved or not. But really looking forward to that trip.
So on that trip, I mean, I don't know anything about it, but it sounds like the Everglades, there's not a whole lot of land, right? I mean, where are you going to sleep?
So
or?
there's 3 different types of sites that they have. They have a bunch of different like campsites or spots to sleep throughout the park. There's sites that are on the beach. There's sites that are actually on solid ground, and there's sites that are called chickees, which are essentially just huts that they put in the middle of the water.
Okay.
So I've got the plan that I have mapped out. I think the first 4 nights I'm going down along the coast, staying on beach sites. So really just anywhere along this stretch of beach, you put your tent up, sleeping bag out, whatever you want to do, and you camp there. And then once you get to kind of that's the southern tip of the state, it's where they have like the visitor center. There's a couple campgrounds there. It's like the Flamingo Visitor Center or something. And then there's this canal that goes up into kind of the heart of the park. And there's this big lake there. It's like Whitewater Lake or something, named for when the wind comes through, gets whitecaps and stuff. But yeah, you kind of go up through all the wilderness for the next 4 or 5 days, just either staying in those little chickees or in some of the banks that are a little bit more sturdy.
Yeah.
So I think the longest day would be like 20 and a half miles.
Right. So those little chickees or whatever you call them, you got to reserve those, or if it's just open, it's open? Or?
Yeah, so what you got to do is if you're heading into like the heart of the park, if you're going to do one of these trips, you got to apply for a wilderness permit. And the system online actually is pretty good. You kind of say like, hey, first night I'm going to stay here, next night I'm going to stay here. And it's got all the places where you can sleep kind of laid out. Mm-hmm. And so then one of the national park, workers, rangers, whatever, they'll take a look at what your itinerary is, and they'll see, what's the distance between each of these spots. Is it an appropriate amount of, distance? Is it short enough? Is this person aware of what they're doing? And then they'll approve it. And so each time you select like where I'm going to stay, it gives you a number of like, there's 10 possible spots. Here's how many are filled.
Okay.
And every time I was clicking on it, it looked like it was open. So it's, I suppose if you didn't want to, go by these systems, you could just head in there and sleep wherever you wanted. But if you're doing it by like the actual system, you kind of got to set up a reservation or get a permit kind of thing. And it's, like $2 a night plus $17 for the permit. So it's all right. But
well, speaking of navigation and stuff, I don't think we've talked about this at all, but I know we talked about how far out you would plan and things like that. But how did you navigate the river? Did you have just Google Maps, or did you have paper maps, or?
So through Minnesota, we used the DNR maps that they had. Those 10 maps were really awesome.
Yeah, they're really good.
I wish the rest of the river had them. But for the rest of the river, I used Google Maps a lot. The map on Strava actually was pretty good. So I'd usually have Strava up on my phone. And if I was, looking where I was going next, I'd just pull up the map feature on Strava and kind of take a look at that. But in order to plan out kind of distances and days and everything like that for more longer term planning, on the Facebook page, somebody had posted a KMZ, which is a little Google Earth file. So I'd open it up on Google Earth and it'd have a pin for every mile. And so I'd take a look at, where I'm pulling out this night and where the next pullout could be and how many miles that is, and kind of mapped it all out and figured out how many miles each of these stops would be, and from there kind of figured out which stops I was actually going to take.
Yeah.
So that KMZ was incredibly useful because both for the long-term planning and then even when I was in it, paddling on the river, I could pull up that thing and there'd be a blue dot right where I was. It would let me know, how far I am to the next mile marker, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we had the paper maps as well, the 10 DNR maps at the start, and we also had a digital copy of that as well. So I didn't use the paper maps whatsoever. I mean, it was on our thwart, on the front of the canoe, sitting there, but I didn't look at it. I looked at I just did it on the phone. I'm just a phone guy, but
yeah.
And then we had I'll show it to you. It's on my phone over here, but
okay.
I'll show you what else we used. But we had those DNR maps in Minnesota, and then we had an upper map, we had a lower map.
That's right.
We didn't have a Atchafly map or whatever, but
yeah, I did start using those the Army Corps engineer maps.
Yeah.
I used those for the lower miss.
Yeah.
I didn't have those for the upper.
Yeah.
Is that how you guys found spots to camp in the upper, from like Minneapolis to St. Louis?
Mainly it was just Google satellite. I mean, we would just pull up and look for sandbars. I mean, we just pulled up and just zoomed in and looked. We knew how far down we wanted to go, 30 miles or whatever, and we just we would count 30 miles on the other map that we had. It was the same way. It had all the miles were a dot or whatever, a black dot. So we would do
about 6 miles to a sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we would just map out where 30 miles was going to be, what town it was near, and we pulled up the satellite on Google Maps and just zoom in and try to figure out what side of the river we were going to be on, and where there was a possible sandbar or boat ramp or whatever. But it was basically just looking for sand on the satellite.
So
worked out pretty well.
One of the things that was wild for me is growing up in Wisconsin, I'm not really used to like tides or rivers changing height or anything. But once I got on the lower Mississippi, I think the first night I was out there, I ran into a guy that was jet skiing down the river, at least a portion of it. And he was talking to me about how he just left a marina where they told him the river was on the rise. And I was like, what do you mean? I didn't know that rivers were like moving this much. But once you get south of that last lock and dam, it's at the whims of whatever flow is coming from the north.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's going to be coming up the next couple days. And I was like, okay, I'll pull my kayak, another couple feet. And woke up the next morning and the waves were lapping the bottom of my kayak. And I was like, holy crap, I'm so glad I moved that thing up.
Yeah, you got lucky.
But you're right. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, when I got on the lower miss, the first 2 or 3 days, I think it was on the rise. After that, it was falling the entire time.
Yeah.
How did it go for you guys? Like, I know you had the one day, but was it on the rise? Was it?
Yeah, it was on the rise at that point. Yeah. So that particular day, it rose 1.7 feet, and we had no clue. We weren't even paying attention to the rising and falling of the river. We just, we got to a campsite. We'd see the water line, where the waves were coming up, and we'd pull it up a couple feet past that, And this particular night, we were on a beach that was as flat as this ground right here. So there was no elevation going up. So when that water raised, a foot and a half, it took over 14 feet of the beach. So it just was a poor choice of beach, and it was just, we should have been paying attention. And after, from that day forward, of course, we found a website where we
check the river gauges and everything.
The NO something.
NOAA,
yeah. We would we were really on top of the water levels at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it continued to rise for a good 5 days after that day, I think, and then it started going back down again. And like you said, it's just depending on the weather up north. How much water they let out, and but it's just amazing to me. I mean, 1.7 feet. At the portion we were close to. God, why can't I remember any freaking names anymore? We were on the Tennessee side of the river. Arkansas was on the other side. What was that town on the other side? But anyway, it was a pretty decent size, width of the river right there.
Yeah.
But I just can't imagine how much water it takes
To have that thing
to
rise
raise
a
that
foot.
level a foot and a half.
Yeah.
How many
That's wild.
millions and bazillions of gallons of water that it takes to go a foot and a half
Yeah. Overnight.
overnight. Yeah,
Man, that's insane.
it is insane. And we talked about learning how to paddle with a new paddle. How you changing boats, but I can't imagine what Harry went through. We were
With a completely new
1,500 miles into this trip, completely new boat, new paddle, new flotation device. I mean, everything was new. To relearn that entire
That
boat
late in the game.
That late in the game, yeah, had to suck. And he almost quit. I mean, it was 2 times after that, after he got that boat, that he had texted us, back in the back and said, "When we get to this campsite, I think I'm done tomorrow. I think I'm not paddling anymore," because he was having all kind of new pains and issues and stuff. And we actually had to make a stop after Memphis, an unexpected stop, about 30 miles down. And luckily this guy was in construction actually that we stopped, a guy named Brian. He let us use his camping cabin, or his hunting cabin, not camping cabin, hunting cabin. But luckily he was in construction, so we pulled up. He had every tool you could imagine in the back of his truck, and we actually did some modifications to the canoe to make it more comfortable so he could continue to paddle. And then a little bit further down from that, after we adjusted his foot pedals and made some modifications to the boat and stuff, his seat broke.
Oh my gosh.
So he's like, "I'm done. I can't paddle this." Every time he paddled, his seat's just moving all over the place, and he couldn't get any stability. He couldn't get any foot pressure, to help him propel.
Oh my gosh.
So we had to. Eric and I were a good 5-6 miles behind him at that point. We were like, "God damn it, this he's not quitting. We're not letting him quit." So we were talking to ourselves on the way down. We're like, "Okay." Eric would say to me, "Brian, okay, we got paracord, we've got duct tape, we've got this and that." We actually even,
what can we do?
Yeah, we actually even pulled a plank of wood out of the water that has some nails in it,
Okay.
just in case we could use a couple of the nails for something. So we get up to the beach and we're like, "Harry, we're not giving up on you, man. It's like Apollo 13 or whatever. We've got all these tools. We can make this thing work. We're going to fix this thing." And we did. We ended up using my yoga mat and a couple other, another plank of wood that he had in his boat that the other guy had given him.
Yep.
Said, "Here's an extra plank just in case you might need to make some more modifications." And we ended up making it work. We ended up fixing the seat to where it wouldn't move, and he ended up paddling the rest of the way down.
Awesome.
And we had some struggles, man, a couple times. And for Harry to get to the end was amazing after everything that had happened. But
yeah, that's one of the things that kind of stuck with me through the river is I was also reading for the first half of the river. I was reading McConaughey's book Green Lights, and
I had it on audiobook.
Yes,
I listened to it on the river as well.
And one of the things he talked about was it's persist. What is this? Or 3 things. I kind of made my own of adapt or overcome.
Yeah.
It was persist, pivot, or concede.
Yeah.
And it's just like you're either gonna keep going with whatever you got, you're gonna figure out a way to make it through, or you're gonna throw up the white flag.
Yeah.
And it's just when you're determined to do something, you're just gonna find the way.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that. I love that you guys were just committed. Like, he's gonna do this. We can't let him.
Oh, yeah, we weren't letting him quit at that point. We were way too far into the game.
You're so far into it.
Yeah, and he had just bought this boat and recommitted because he was done in Memphis. He was going to quit, and
no,
he ended up calling his mom because he thought it was maybe a sign, from God or whoever you believe in or whatever you believe in, that he needed to get off the river and be with his mother because, like I said, his mother, was having some health issues or what have you. So he took it as a sign and said, "Well, this just means I need to get off the river and go be with my mother." He ended up calling his mom, and I think some other family members. They had a conference call that day to talk about his mother, I think. So it wasn't about the trip at all. The boat thing kind of happened at the same time that he was already supposed to have this conference call with his family to start making some plans possibly for something that might happen with his mother. But so when he got on the phone, everybody encouraged him and said, "Don't you dare quit! Don't you dare get off the river." You know, even his mother was like, "You better finish this goddamn thing." So that kind of re-inspired him and re-motivated him, and
That's
he decided to buy a boat. And then the next day we stayed, a day in Memphis to get the boat, and he could not find a boat to save his life. And at the very last hour or whatever, ended up finding something doable.
Yep.
At the Bass Pro Shop there in Memphis, and got back on the river. So
That's awesome. I'm glad he was able to finish.
yeah, me too. It was awesome to finish together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't imagine, because that boat was totally different than the boat that we started
Yeah.
with. Yeah.
And again, all the gear that you'd been using for 1,500 miles,
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
Besides, I guess, the tent.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, he had pulled enough of his personal belongings up. I think he lost a couple things in the boat that he didn't really want to lose. I mean, you don't want to lose any of it. But,
Right.
But yeah, at least he had his cooler with all his food in it, and he had his water bladder, and he had his, tent and all the personal items, wallet, all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah.
But so you almost had yours wash out. I mean, it was definitely at the cusp of being
It was
washed
closer. Closer than I wanted it to be.
Yeah. So any other incidents? I mean, did you capsize at all? Did you take on water? Did you fall in?
There's the one time I took on water, never capsized. After that, I always made sure I brought my boat up plenty far enough.
But no major equipment mishaps or falling in the water or...
No. The only other scary thing I had that kind of happened was on the Atchafalaya. I don't know if it was quicksand or what it was, but...
Willie mentioned something about quicksand, yeah.
That's the thing, is like I didn't think about it as quicksand until Willie said like I hit quicksand, and I was like, maybe that's what I was in.
Yeah.
But there's really no banks in the Atchafalaya to like pull off and use the bathroom or go get your food in the back of your kayak or anything. So I found this like 6-foot stretch of what looked like sand, and I tried it. And there's this barge that was coming up the river, one of like the 4 barges that I saw in the Atchafalaya the entire time I was going down it.
Yeah, I think we saw like 2.
And it was just like the worst timing of, I shouldn't have stopped there. I should have found something else. But I pulled off, and I go to step out on this, what I thought was sand, and I'm up to my knees in muck. And then the boat comes, and the boat's sending waves, and it's filling up my kayak. So I had to bilge that thing out while I'm knee deep in muck. Yeah. Like I can't move because it's just going to sink deeper. So that was a little precarious situation of like, I need to be off of this little spot of muck as quick as possible, but I needed to pee. I needed to get some water refilled. I needed to get some food in me because it was midday. I was getting hungry. And again, it was just this boat came up at the wrong time, and oh man, I was in a bad mood after that.
Yeah.
And
you still had your dad with you, said, right? That on the Atchafalaya too?
I mean, there wasn't really...
Not a whole lot of places, right? I mean,
on the Atchafalaya, yeah.
Road access.
It was...
To get there.
We pulled out it was 6 miles onto the Atchafalaya, Simsport. We pulled out there and we drove, half an hour west and stayed in a hotel. And then I went down the river another 30 miles or so to Krotz Springs. There was a campground that was right there on the river. Wasn't a great campground. It was so humid out at that point. I don't do well with humidity. To the point where I was like just sweating standing outside. The mosquitoes were terrible. I ended up sleeping in the cab of the truck with just like my head on the dashboard for like 3 hours that night. Yeah. And I just got terrible sleep. And then the next day, because there was nothing from Krotz Springs down, like I didn't know about the sandbar at I-10 until I talked to the guy that I met at the bottom of the river. I didn't know that was there. Like I didn't see it as I paddled past. I was more looking at the bridge.
Yeah.
So I went.
I mean, it was a small little spit of land, but it was doable.
Enough for putting a tent.
Yeah.
I ended up putting, I don't know how many miles it was. It was 50 some miles, and I paddled an hour past sunset, knowing it was just gonna be a shit day. I went from Krotz Springs all the way down to a boat ramp called Verdonville Landing, just off Yellow Bayou. And the last hour, dude, mosquitoes were just attacking my hands. They were getting all over me.
On the water.
On the water.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was kind of rough. But he pulled me out there, and then we drove down to Burns Point. I slept in the truck, or slept in the cab there again, just because I don't know, I was just so like ready to be done.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah, I mean, that last, I don't know, couple 100 miles just really sucked to me. I mean, they were the worst of the entire trip.
Yeah.
And part of it's just wanting to be done, right? But part of it was, once we hit the Atchafalaya, it seemed like you said, the mugginess, right? The humidity just
sat there.
You hit that swamp, and it didn't look like a swamp, but it had swamp features to it, like the humidity, the bugs. We had seen maybe a handful of days of shitty bugs on the rest of the entire river.
Yep.
Maybe, some flies here and there.
Northern Minnesota was flies for me.
Yeah, the flies, were biting through my gloves and had big welts on my hands and stuff. And Harry was counting fly kills at one point. I mean, we all had a fly swatter with us, so we'd get to lunch or whatever, and he'd be like, 10 more flies down. Yeah, like a notches on his canoe, But yeah, we didn't have any problems with bugs really because of the low water, I guess. And just temperatures and stuff. Not a whole lot of rain. But as soon as we hit that swamp, man, it was like all the mosquitoes that we had missed the entire rest of the trip were on that fucking swamp.
Yeah.
I mean, the very first night, we pulled through the lock, and we went about 2 miles up on the left.
Okay.
Was the first place we camped on the Atchafalaya. It was just a little sandbar there. And that night, at dusk or whatever, and then the next morning, really bad mosquitoes. And then we ended up going to the Atchafalaya Dreaming, and we had about 106 miles from there, I think, to the end.
Sounds about right.
And Harry had found a what the hell is it called? A hunting cabin, I guess, on the side of the river. So he had gotten there first. He pulled up off the river, knocked on the door. Nobody answered the door, so we decided we're just going to camp in his backyard of this guy's hunting cabin. That next morning, we woke up, and I've posted a video out there of the mosquitoes in the tent, or outside, underneath the fly, outside the tent that night that Eric took. Actually, he took that video. We got up that next morning. We would normally get up around 6 and try and get on the water by 7. Mm-hmm. So it was still dark at that point. We got up. I swear, if you did like this with your arms, it was like hitting a wall of mosquitoes. God. I mean, there was so many mosquitoes. They were the biggest mosquitoes I've ever seen, and I thought the mosquitoes were huge in Alaska. I mean, they call it the state bird up there in Alaska, but there was oh my God, I cannot even fathom how many mosquitoes. I've never experienced so many mosquitoes in my entire life. God, and I'm old, dude. I've been around for a long time. And I've been in the South. I've been around a lot of mosquitoes. But so they were attacking us. I put on 3 different sprays that I had. I had one spray that was 100% DEET. My other spray was whatever the other stuff. It starts with a P, I think. The other thing that you use instead of DEET is, I can't remember what the name of it is. I sprayed that on, and I had long sleeves on and long pants, but I'm still just getting attacked. And then I had some other off, like OFF, the off-brand with aloe and chamomile or something. I had 3 different sprays on. Didn't phase them at all. Did not bother them once. I mean, I'm spraying it right on the mosquitoes. They don't even care. So Harry and I are having a hard time. Eric's over here. He's got his bug net on. He's got his hat on top of that. He's put his rain jacket on over the top of his clothing. He's got this little scarf thing that he keeps with him that he wrapped around his lower body. So he's like double barriered, clothing wise. So he's doing okay. He even put his gloves on.
Yep.
He's good to go. Harry and I don't have all that stuff. My rain jacket was in the canoe, out in the water. My head net was out in the canoe. Everything was out in the canoe. So Harry and I finally looked at each other and said, "We're getting the fuck out of here, man. We're packing up as quickly as possible." I mean, we did like a a marathon sprint, I guess you could say, tent tearing down. I mean, it's the quickest we'd ever packed up everything. We packed it up. We had a 3-level little mud bank that we had to go down to get to the water. Mm-hmm. Our canoes were actually tied up, actually floating in the water. We couldn't even pull them up onto any land at this point. So we had them pulled up. We had them all tied together with our cable locks, and then Eric had his boat tied up to a tree. With a carabiner and, you know, a rope and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So they're all just sitting there, just kind of lapping in the water. Harry and I get down there, load all our stuff in as quickly as we can. All I had to do was undo my cable lock to get away from Eric's boat. Somehow Harry and Eric's were tied together or something. So Harry untied the rope and then retied Eric's boat up. Because Eric was still at the campsite. I don't even think I know now, he didn't even know we were leaving. He didn't know our plan was to get the fuck out of there. We just wanted to get out in the water. So we both get in our boats. We paddle out into the middle of the water, even go down just a little bit. The mosquitoes stayed with us, and they're in our boat. I mean, they're underneath the bow, you know, in the hull, and just all around, chewing up the ankles. They were all over the back of my gloves, you know, just killing me. So we still didn't even get away from them out in the middle of the water. We're sitting out there. We didn't see Eric for a little while. Finally, Harry said, I told Harry, I said, I'm going to go ahead and start paddling, man, because my hands, my feet, everything is on fire right now. I'm screaming. I've got to start paddling and get away from these mosquitoes and trying to get my mind off of this. Yeah. Because I was on fire with the histamine response, you know. So I start paddling down, and Harry says, fuck it, I'm going to start paddling too. So we start paddling. Harry gets up way ahead of me. I'm by myself for about 2 hours. I finally found a place to pull off where I could pee. I couldn't find any shoreline to pull off anywhere.
Impossible.
So I finally pull off, hit the shoreline. I'm sitting there on the bow of my boat. I'm kind of eating a snack, I guess, at that point. Eric comes pulling up. He pulls up. He beaches out where I'm beached out. And he says, hey, what's up, buddy fucker? And I said, what are you talking about, man? He said, you're a buddy fucker. You and Harry are buddy fuckers. And I'm like, what? What does that even mean? I don't even know what you're talking about. He's like, well,
y'all guys abandoned me.
I just had to swim about 50 yards to go get my canoe.
No way.
And I said, I got nothing to do with that. I said,
talk to Harry.
Yeah, we just left. He's like, well, somebody untied my boat and it was floating down the goddamn Mississippi River or down the Atchafalaya Swamp or whatever.
Oh my God.
And I said, dude, I didn't touch your boat, man. I said, I undid my cable. I pulled off. I said, we were trying to get away from the mosquitoes. And he's like, fuck the mosquitoes, man. You guys are a bunch of pussies. If you would have just put on your stuff, you know, the mosquitoes didn't bother me one bit. And I said, well, Eric, all our stuff was in our boats, man. We didn't have the stuff. We had to get out of there. Well, y'all are buddy fuckers, man. I just had to take a swim. And I didn't do anything to your boat. Talk to Harry. He messed with your boat. He's like, that makes a lot of sense because he's a fucking Marine, and Marines don't know how to tie a knot or something like that. So I was like, dude, don't get mad at me. He's like, okay, you're only a half a buddy fucker. And I said, no, I'm not a buddy fucker at all, dude. Oh, he called me a buddy fucker just because I left him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, apparently Harry didn't tie the knot correctly on the rope. So, you know, the waves just kind of swirled it loose and it started floating down the river.
Oh, and that's not the river you want to swim through.
No, that's where all the alligators and shit are.
Yeah. And it's not clean either. That's a muddy river.
Yeah. So he was not a happy camper, man. And that was, I think, the second time he had to swim because early on in the trip, I don't know, this might have been 3 or 4 days in, I think, but he all of a sudden had to go to the bathroom.
Yep.
You know, his stomach started rumbling. He's like, oh shit, I'm going to shit my pants. So he pulled off the river, didn't pull his canoe up far enough. You know, this was early on, didn't realize.
Yep.
Went to the tree line to take a shit or whatever, came back and his boat was floating down the river. So, but luckily at that point, there wasn't a whole lot of flow going on. Yeah. It is so low, yeah. So he had to swim twice to get his boat. Harry fell in the very first day, fell out of his boat.
Oh, jeez.
On that first 3 miles that we were doing. Fell out of his boat on day 1. I never fell out. I took in a lot of water, but never fell out.
Yeah.
I don't think Willie ever fell out. He took on a lot of water as well.
Yep.
But
he was telling me that you guys had to stop like every hour to pump out?
Just because, like, I don't know if it was every hour, but every couple of hours, we had to bail.
Damn.
We had to bail boats. Because with the proper, what Willie calls PPF, proper paddling form, which he learned from Eric. So you're in the boat and you go, forward paddle stroke. So you're coming like this, and then you're coming like this.
Yep.
So your oar is over
Your boat.
Dripping
water.
Yeah, over the front of your boat, and it's amazing how much water drips off of that damn paddle into your boat. And, if we would have had a skirt, of course, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But 2 hours worth. I mean, you'd have water this deep in the back of the canoe, and probably about this much of the back of it, going into the point and to the back.
Wow.
And they all three had bilge pumps, hand powered bilge pumps, but I had one of those. We had those rubber boots for the mud or whatever, mud boots. I just used that boot. I just
right in the boot. That's awesome.
Yeah. And of course we had sponges.
Yeah, Willie said those things deteriorated right away.
The original ones, yeah.
Okay.
We bought some new synthetic ones, and they lasted, the rest of the trip. But the initial ones they gave us, I don't know what kind of sponges they bought, but they just disintegrated.
Oh man,
they were horrible.
So, what was your favorite camp spot along the river? I know you took a lot of great sunrise pictures. I'm actually really jealous of that. I didn't get as many good sunrises as you did.
Yeah. And that's a first for me because I'm not a morning person whatsoever. So for me to get up and even see the sunrise is a chore. But you had to do what you had to do out there.
Yeah.
You wanted to get on the river early so you didn't mess with those, thermal winds and all that kind of stuff that come up in the midday.
Yep.
So favorite campsite, is that the question?
Yeah.
Nobody's asked me that question before. Favorite campsite. Oh, there's so many of them, really. I mean, I think the favorites became the sandbars down on the lower river, for
right.
Sure. I can't really think of one favorite spot, to be honest with you.
All right.
I would just say the sandbars.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking, I didn't like the sand that we stayed on a few times where you couldn't even get your stakes in the ground. I mean, the sand was just so fluffy and thick that it was hard to even get your stuff set up. But I'm talking about the lower sandbars where it was kind of packed sand, but it was still a beach.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
A little more manageable.
Yeah.
But I can't really say what was my favorite. I don't know. Do you have a favorite?
I got a couple that come to mind. There's so just south of, I think it was south, right around New Madrid, Missouri. It was called Island Number 8, and I had been sleeping on the Illinois side at that point, so sun was setting and hitting my shore when I was going to sleep.
Yeah.
But it was so hot. I don't do well with heat and humidity. It was so hot, into the night, an hour after sunset, it's still 70, 80 degrees, whatever it was. I was sweating, just laying there, just waiting to stop sweating so I could fall asleep.
Yeah.
So I finally wanted to sleep on the other side of the Missouri side of the river, and Island 8 was the first time I could do that, and it was this huge sandbank that went up maybe, 30, 40 feet, and I dragged my tent and all my shit up to the top of that sandbank, and it was one of those swoops of the river where it kind of turned almost 180 degrees, over 180 degrees.
Yeah. And
so the river was just kind of twisting around this curve, and Island 8 was right at the end of that curve. And so it was it would kick up these whirlpools throughout the night, and it just made this sound of the sucking water. And it was, just the sound of the river, how high up the site, my tent was on the river. I could actually see some elevation and look down on it a little bit. Because that's one thing that I missed. I love elevation. I love mountains. I love getting up and seeing a view. You didn't really get that when you're 2 feet off of water for 60 days. So I loved that part of the campsite. I think that same night there was a plane that came down, was 40 feet off the water, just flying over the river. That's pretty cool.
Wow.
But I loved that campsite. It was, like I said, it was awesome to just be up a little bit off the water, height wise. to kind of see the river be wild around this curve. That was pretty cool. My other favorite one was it was called Acadia Point, just into Louisiana. So we just finished up Arkansas, paddled in, and it was this portion of the river. It kind of came around, was turning left, and there was 2 islands that kind of bordered the channel. And I stayed on the island that watched sunset, so I was on the eastern shore or whatever.
Yeah.
And I got to watch sunset go down. It was a pretty steep bank, but it was just like a beautiful spot to post up. There was boats that came by. That was one of the things that I loved about the river is like in the middle of the night, you could just see these boats passing, and there's just a couple lights here and there, and then the tug at the back is pushing it all.
Yeah. That's what I liked about the lower river too. That you'd be staying on the sandbar, and I mean, the fucking
40 feet away.
Barge would come by, as close as this RV to us right here.
Yeah.
Just right there.
Just
right
passing by.
Did you ever have any boats honk at you?
Not while I was sleeping, but while I was paddling, yeah.
Really?
Yep.
We never did have that many. We had, I can count on one hand, I think, the amount of times. And we would even, be doing this when they'd be going by, trying to get them to honk. And every now and then, one would honk, but it was very rare.
Yeah.
We tried to get them to honk all the time.
Yeah, I never tried to
We'd yell at them, show us your tits or whatever, and just all kind of stuff we'd yell at them, and nobody paid attention to us at all.
Oh, man.
And we pretty much, I think I waved at every single barge that went by.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then I bought that horn at one point, that bike horn. It's actually in the back of my truck. I carry it around with me. But, I would honk at them when they went by, and I was trying to get anything I could do to get their attention to try and do something. But yeah, I love being on a beach and the boat's just right there, coming right by.
Yeah.
You almost felt like you could touch them. And then in the middle of the night, you'd wake up to go out to pee or whatever, and you'd see one coming down, and this giant ass spotlight just lighting up the shore. Every now and then they'd come over and hit your tent or whatever. Like, what's this guy doing over here?
Oh, there's a couple times too where there'd be some storms that were like across the river on the other side, just like rolling through, and it's just this light show that came up. And dude, again, it's so dark out there. There's no light pollution, especially on the lower Miss.
Yeah.
Dude, there's no cities that are near the river. Like, you're just in the middle of wilderness. You could see everything.
Yeah.
Oh, it was, and then again, you got the sound of the river there with you too. It was some of the best camping I've ever done.
Oh yeah.
On those sandbars in the middle of the river.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'd never camped until I did this trip.
Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're spoiled, man.
There was a bunch of new stuff. Yeah. I'd never camped. I think I'd been in a tent, like in a backyard or something.
Yeah.
I'd never camped anywhere before. I mean, I'd done this, before I did the river. I was RVing, but it was pretty much in a house, really. Man, good times.
Hell yeah.
I miss it, dude. I mean, it's only been a month and a half, but there's days I still wish I was out there, for sure.
Yeah. About a month ago, I was passing over a river, like some body of water or something. I was just like, dude, I need to get back out there.
Yeah.
I was feeling it again, and again today, getting on the river for the first time since the Mississippi, man, it was like riding a bike.
Yeah.
There's just something about like hitting that pace and the rhythm of it.
Yeah.
It's different than hiking.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that hit me about it was
there's a bigger zen factor to it, I think. Yeah.
There is. It's, I don't know, to me the trail is, I don't know if it was just because I spent too much time by myself out there, but I started to personify my boat. I started to personify the river. Whenever I'm hiking, I never get that. The trail is always just this inanimate object. It's the trail. It's what I'm walking on. But when I'm paddling, the river's more of a person, has more of a personality, more of a character. Because you're more involved with it, dude. I mean, every time you put your paddle in the water, what angle you put it in at, how fast you pull it, all of this stuff, you interact so much more with the water than you do with the trail.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I miss about that type of travel or that type of exercise. It's how involved you are with the water.
Yeah, I like it.
Oh, it's awesome, man. It's like I said, you don't get that with hiking.
No, you don't, for sure. I mean, I did, I used to do a lot of trail running when I, was ultra marathoning and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are off road on trails, and I kind of got that with ultra running. When you're out there all by yourself, because a lot of the ultra marathons that you do, it might be a handful of people. The very first one I did, a 50 miler, was only 12 of us. I mean, it's not like a marathon where there's 10,000 people. Very few people are out there running a 50-mile race.
Yeah.
And you start off together, but eventually you all just separate. So you're on your own most of the trail. Matter of fact, the 50 miler that I did, I never saw another person after the start of the race.
Wow.
The very first ultra marathon I did. But what I was getting at is, I feel like when you're by yourself on the trail like that, you definitely, and you're running, you get the cadence, the fall of your foot, and you get your footsteps, and you got no noise pollution going on out there either. So I did feel like I got in tune or in touch with the trail or with nature, and just the footfalls and the breathing, and I mean, you just kind of get in tune with everything that's going on, and you kind of fall into that same rhythm as I did on the Mississippi River. But in a marathon, not so much. I mean, you got so much noise going on, and you're hearing everybody else's footfalls and footsteps and breathing, and people are blaring music sometimes without headphones, and you got traffic, cars, on certain marathons. So, but the ultra marathon running was very, very much like the river, I think, where you're one with the trail, you're one with the nature. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's very cool. Well, I think that's about it. What do you think?
Sounds good.
An hour and 30 minutes worth? Is that good enough?
Yeah.
I think we talked about it all.
A lot of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to say goodbye to this guy. See you guys later. Appreciate you listening, watching, what have you. Sorry the first 30 minutes was not very nice to look at, but what can you do? All right. Talk to you later, guys.